Well, hello, and welcome to another edition of Today's History, Upper Ohio Valley. I'm your host, Bob Connors, and I have a great guest today.
Ho, ho, ho.
He gave himself away.
Oh.
He's the best guest we ever have. Santa is visiting us right now. Get the kids, get ready. We're going to have a nice talk, and you will learn a lot about Santa Claus. Santa, welcome.
Thank you, Bob. It's always a pleasure to come to the Ohio Valley, specifically St. Clairsville, and sit and chat with you a little bit. I always enjoy my time.
Well, same here. I like to have a little discussion with you, and sometimes kids ask me questions that
Sure.
I have to pass along, so we'll do a little bit of that.
All right.
But before we get started, I wanted to jump right into the gnome, the lazy gnome. What on earth is that?
Well, let me tell you. First of all, to get to that point, do you happen to know how we get our magic? Have you ever? Well, have you heard of the Northern Lights?
Yes.
The Aurora Borealis. Well, you see, the North Pole is the closest landmass to the lights. So all that magnetic electricity from the sun allows us to create a pathway around the Earth, a portal, if you will. And that's how I send out the elves to everyone's home, you see. And a lot of people think they don't have elves because they don't have an elf on the shelf.
Yeah.
But everybody has an elf. There is a small door about this wide that is in every house, and that's how I send the elves in. And no boys and girls have been able to find it. The only creatures who have found the door are the mice. And every house has mice.
But that's where they hide. Huh?
That's where I send the gnomes through. And we use the portal to get around the world in less than 24 hours.
That's amazing.
And the Northern Lights were so beautiful this year, I think we're going to set a record. 23 hours and 50 minutes is what our calculation is. So it's just really spectacular.
That's outrageous. That's
Oh,
outrageous.
yes. Oh, you ask about the gnomes.
The gnome, yes.
You see, first of all, this is the most misbehaving elf at the North Pole this year. This is Elfie. And I carry Elfie in my green bag with me because no one has the ability to control Elfie other than me. So every year I take the worst behaving elf, and I'm always looking at them. Now, we have some elves that misbehave for boys and girls. And, you know, I have two types of elves. I have the worker elves that make the toys, and then I have the watcher elves who watch the boys and girls. Well, some of those elves are very, very ornery. And they toilet paper trees, or they dump the flour out on the counter, or they hide in the freezer or the refrigerator. So if they're very bad, I call them back to the North Pole. And in their place over the last 3 years, we have begun to send out lazy gnomes. These guys are watchers just like the elves. But if I put a lazy gnome right there, Bob, it would stay there the entire Christmas season.
Really?
So there are many parents and grandparents who are all about the lazy gnomes because it is very difficult to keep up with these elves.
I bet it is. I bet it is. And then you have all of the reindeer.
Yes, that's another story altogether, you see. And Mrs. Claus is feeding the reindeer the magic oats and corn. And she called me today and she said, Mr. Claus, I am up here feeding these reindeer. I have been since Thanksgiving. And it's hard work. And you're down there in St. Clairsville having a good time visiting with Bob and all types of people. And I said, absolutely right, Mrs. Claus, and thank you very much. I was very polite, Bob. I wanted to make sure she wasn't offended. But this is what I'm supposed to do.
I guess it is. Now, I have heard a story from very reliable sources that Dancer and Prancer often start dancing and prancing around as you're trying to fly, and that messes up your flight schedule.
Well,
is that true?
It all depends on the amount of magic oats and corn that they get. So it's very critical. If we just overdo it a little, they get out of hand. I have to admit, they think they're in the disco era of the 1980s.
That's what I've been told.
They can really dance. I have to tell you that.
I was told they are really good dancers.
They are really good dancers.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that was one of the questions I had. And the other one is always good old Rudolph.
Oh.
And how is Rudolph and his nose so bright?
Well, you know, Rudolph is doing great. People don't know this, but we get a new red-nosed reindeer every 1,000 years. But Rudolph is only 84 years old.
Oh.
So Rudolph will be around for a long, long time. Rudolph will probably be around longer than I will. Because you know, Bob, we Santas don't live forever. I'm going to celebrate a birthday on the 27th of December. I will be 560 years old this year.
Wow.
And Mrs. Claus has been doing a wonderful job of slimming me down. I'm eating orange and green vegetables, you see, and I asked her if she's watching a lot of TV and has seen those advertisements for the balance of nature with those pills, orange and green, you see. But yes, she wants me to live to 1,000. So I may not outlive this current Rudolph. There might have to be another Santa that takes care.
Well, we'll see about that.
Yeah.
Now, speaking of the weight loss and all that, you often get chocolate milk and cookies left for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is that true all over the world?
Yes. Well, a lot of places. I do gain 35 pounds in one night.
Wow.
Because of eating all those cookies and chocolate milk. But one of the most unique places that I visit is Ireland, you see. And in Ireland, instead of milk and cookies, they leave me a mince pie and a glass of Guinness stout. So, but I just take little sips, Bob, because if I drank every glass of Guinness that the Irish left for me, I don't know where we would end up. I'm not sure we'd get all the presents delivered.
You might even start joining Prancer and Dancer.
I might be dancing with Prancer and Dancer. Yes, I never thought about that, but that is something to consider.
That makes sense.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, a little Guinness, a nip of Guinness is not too bad.
No, but if you multiply that by a couple, 2 or 3 million, it can be a little bit of a problem. Yes.
Some of it you can just smell it a little bit.
Yeah, just the aroma, right? Okay.
A little whiff, and that will take care of it. So other than that, I wanted to ask you about Mrs. Claus, because I have some people wanting to know, what does she do all year while you and the elves are preparing for the next coming year?
I mean, Mrs. Claus is an herbalist. She takes plants and she makes potions. So even for sadness or melancholy, she has a concoction that if you're feeling down and low, she can give to you, and it spruces you up a little bit. But she makes all types of things. She makes paste for the reindeer and takes care of the elves in a good way. But Mrs. Claus and I, come April, we always head south to the beach. This past year, we were at Folly Beach in Charleston, South Carolina, and then Tybee Beach in Savannah, 2 of our favorite places because there's so much history there. Yeah.
Well, that's good. And what about, you've seen the movie Elf, I'm sure.
I have seen that.
Now, what was he like when he visited the North Pole?
Well,
in person.
A little peculiar, I have to admit.
Was he?
Just, I mean, you know, and I have some elves that are just like this tall, and a few elves that are as tall as he was. So he may have been more enthusiastic than he should have been somehow.
He seems a little excited easily.
Yes, I would say excited easily is a nice way of putting that, Bob. That is true. So, yes, the elves are all kinds of different characters. One other thing about Ireland, most people don't know this, but the elves and the leprechauns are first cousins.
I did not know that.
That's right, and you see, that's why they're so ornery, the elves, because they're blood relatives to the orneriest characters in the world, which are the leprechauns.
The leprechauns, yeah, they are pretty ornery.
And we go visit them every St. Patrick's Day. Lachlan is their chief, and he takes us over to the Lake of Gold, where, you know, all that gold is down in the water. We have a big feast and have a great time. I put gold and green lights on the sleigh. I take Mrs. Claus to visit Lachlan in March. But no, we go traveling, and the elves go fishing. That's what they like to do very much. And then the reindeer just roam and eat and graze and have a good time.
That sounds like a great time getting away from the North Pole.
Yes. Well, you know, a lot of people, it's -4 today at the North Pole. And most people don't know this, but in June and July at the North Pole, it is 70 degrees. So that's when we get all the supposed North Pole tourists who always try to find out where we are. But I have some special magic that allows me to cover up the entrances to the North Pole. It's kind of like dry ice. Makes those clouds and all. So
and nobody can get
yes,
in there.
and then someone asked me, well, what is the temperature in the workshop? Well, we are able to put a dome over the North Pole, and so we have balmy 48 degrees in the workshops, which is comfortable for the elves, because the elves love cold. They love cold weather more than anything, so we can't make it too warm for them.
Yeah, that sounds pretty exciting. Another question I had is, how do the elves get the equipment and the materials to make all of these toys for all of the boys and girls?
Well, we do have suppliers from all over the world, and we do have the Iron Railroad, and the Iron Railroad hauls all these cars to us with all the supplies and materials. Now, I have been getting a lot of requests for Apple Watches and iPhone 15s. And I tell the boys and girls, we just don't make those at the North Pole. We're toy makers, so those kind of go beyond what is a toy in our estimation. So they have to get those. They have to persuade their parents and their grandparents and other folks. And boy, when I tell them that, the sighs and the groans are just amazing. Oh, I was going to ask for that. There is a surprise toy this year.
What's that?
25 years ago, Furbies were the most popular toy for little girls. Well, they have made a comeback.
Oh, wow.
They are about the third most popular toy for little girls. For some reason, they want a Furby. Now, I had a young man who was very savvy with the internet, and he told me that there was a software program with the Xboxes that talk all about Furbies and everything. But it's been the biggest shock to me. Girls really especially asking for Furbies.
Well, what's the biggest toy the boys are after?
Oh, boy, not a dominant one, just all over the board. I know RC cars, remote control cars, that might be the biggest one. And for the young ones, dinosaurs. The dinosaurs have not lost their magic. Those young boys, they like their dinosaurs. Paw Patrol is pretty big, and Hot Wheels still. We make a lot of Hot Wheels. And for the girls, it's Barbie's dollhouse and Gabby's dollhouse and Barbie's camper and Barbie's car. So it's a lot about the Barbies. And we made a magnificent Christmas Barbie this year. So I hope people take advantage of that.
I'm sure they will.
I have a favorite new toy. It's called a drone orb. It's a little round thing, and the drone is inside this orb. And you toss it away, and it's supposed to come directly back to you. But I have to admit, Bob, I've had a very difficult time getting it coming back to me for some reason. I haven't got the magic, so I'm going to have to get some special training from the young boys and girls who can master that, and the elves.
Yeah, I know another thing that I've heard is that you're landing on a roof to deliver goods to the kids, and you're somehow being very quiet these days, more quiet than you've ever been.
Well,
how do you do that?
That's because we have 10 different types of shoes that we put on the hooves of the reindeer. So we can land on any particular surface and make less noise. That has been one of the advances. At the North Pole, we have all these special shoes. And now somebody asked me the other day, Santa, because they went to Disney for a trip, and they said, it's awfully hot, Santa, in Disney in December. What do you do? And I said, well, we have special runners that have mist aspects and that freezes. So I can land on any surface at any time, putting down the mist so I can just slide there. But those elves with those special shoes, that has really made a big difference.
I'll bet that has. I've heard about that.
Yeah.
And I had another question about when you get cookies in America, which one is the most you get? What kind of cookies?
Well, I probably get more chocolate chip cookies than anything, and I would say that's my second most favorite cookie. Oatmeal raisin or anything in oatmeal cookies will suit me the best. But I do like sugar cookies, and I love Oreos. Those are always enjoyable. But yes, chocolate chip cookies.
Well, I thought it might be that.
Yes.
I know you have a busy schedule and you have to move on, but I wanted to ask you at least one more question, and that is for all of the kids who are watching.
Yep.
What message do you have for the kids around the world?
Well, there are a couple. I ask the boys and girls if they have siblings, the younger brothers or sisters are older, and they raise their hand, and I ask them if they've been fighting with their brothers and sisters or friends, classmates, and many of them raised their hand. And I told them very specifically, the more you fight, the fewer gifts I bring, and the lesser caliber of gifts that I bring. So that's one of the things that I tell them, and they seem to understand that. The other thing, Bob, I tell them is, the first Santa was St. Nicholas. And St. Nicholas started the tradition of anonymous giving. He was fortunate enough, his parents passed away when he was just a teenager, and he went and lived with his uncle the monk, and he became a priest, but he had a fortune. They were grain merchants and olive oil merchants, and so he had a lot of money, so he decided he would use that money to help people out. So he would take bread and oranges and figs and nuts to people who were hungry, and he would put coins in the shoes that they left outside in the village so they could buy firewood or they could pay their debts. And one of my favorite things about what he did, he used to throw bags of gold into windows for the girls who were going to be married, and they were 14, 15 years of age. And if you didn't have that dowry to give to the parents of the groom, you were in bad shape. Some of the girls had to become indentured servants or even slaves to pay their way. And so he tossed a bag of gold in this one girl's window, and it was great. She got married. But she had two sisters, and the second bag of gold landed in a stocking that was hung by the fireplace to dry. Now, you have heard by Clement Moore, "'Twas the night before Christmas, and all through the house not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse. And the stockings were hung by the fireplace with care, with the hopes of St. Nicholas would soon be there." Well, everybody still is looking for that bag of gold to land in the stockings. And I think that was the reason that line was in the poem, and that's the reason people hang stockings today. They realize there's great benefit, maybe.
There could be a big benefit.
But St. Nicholas was generous, and I tell them, look, he brings you things that you need. You may not get the gifts you want, but your family needs to eat, or they need to heat their homes, or they need to have money for gasoline for their cars. So when I tell them, Santa Claus still does that today. So you may not get all of those gifts at one time, but just rest assured, I have probably sent some money and some things to the boys' and girls' families. So that is my message. Christmas is about giving and not getting. It's about sharing their talents of sports and music and drawing and singing and dancing, like Prancer and Dancer. So that's what it's about, sharing the love of their talents. Be thankful for the past, joyful for the present, and hopeful for the future. So that is my message to them.
I think that's a very good message.
And they seem to actually respond to it very well after I explain the whole thing about eating and being warm in the wintertime.
And a bag of gold.
And a bag of gold, yes. The older ones are thinking about that bag of gold, because as one said, well, I can buy a lot of toys with that bag of gold. I said, yeah, you probably could. Yeah, that's for sure.
Well, Santa, thank you for joining us.
Always enjoyed talking with you, and always try to impart some new information on the boys and girls and the adults, of course.
I think you did a good job this year.
All right. Thank you so much, Bob. A pleasure.
Thank you for visiting us.
All right. Ho, ho, ho.
And we'll see you next time.